But we begin tonight with a public appeal for missing British backpacker Grace Millane. A short time ago, police held a press conference to appeal for sightings of the 22-year-old who has not been seen since 7:15 p.m. on Saturday night.
She was last seen on the 1st of December, that was Saturday.
A young British traveller filled with hope and dreams, a chance encounter on a dating app, and a night that shocked an entire nation. This is the story of Grace Millane, a 22-year-old who stepped into Auckland's vibrant city lights, never knowing the darkness that awaited her. What really happened that fateful night, and how did a charming man with a twisted past manage to stay hidden in plain sight? Did you know that over 60% of our viewers watch our videos but haven't subscribed yet? If you're one of them, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free, and it helps us bring more stories like this to light. Join our community of true crime enthusiasts, and together, let's honor these untold stories. Grace Emmy Rose Millane was a 22-year-old from Wickford, Essex, a young woman known for her creativity, kindness, and adventurous spirit. She had recently graduated from the University of Lincoln with a degree in advertising and marketing. Determined to experience the world before starting her career, Grace meticulously planned a year-long backpacking trip, saving every penny she could. After exploring South America for 6 weeks, she arrived in New Zealand in late November 2018, eager to immerse herself in its stunning landscapes and vibrant culture. But Grace's journey, filled with dreams and optimism, took a chilling turn. On the evening of December 1st, 2018, Grace arranged to meet someone she'd matched with on Tinder. 26-year-old Jesse Kempson, a man who presented himself as charming and sophisticated. By the next morning, her 22nd birthday, all contact with Grace abruptly stopped. Messages from her family went unanswered, her phone went silent, and she didn't return to her hostel. Grace's disappearance triggered an international search, with her family thousands of miles away, desperately waiting for answers. The timeline seemed simple, a night out in Auckland that started with drinks and laughter. But what happened between the moment Grace walked into the City Life Hotel and her sudden silence the next morning? Who was Jesse Kempson, and why did their seemingly innocent meeting end in tragedy? Behind Jesse's polished image lay a disturbing pattern of lies, manipulation, and violence. As investigators pieced together the events of that night, they uncovered a story more twisted and unsettling than anyone could have imagined. This is the story of Grace Millane's disappearance, a case that would not only shock New Zealand, but also raise chilling questions about the hidden dangers of online dating and the fragility of trust. Grace Millane grew up in the quiet town of Wickford, Essex, as the youngest of 3 siblings. Known for her infectious smile and a talent for painting and photography, Grace was the light of her family. Her friends described her as someone who could walk into a room and instantly brighten the atmosphere. As she neared the end of her university studies, Grace began dreaming of something bigger, a year-long adventure to see the world before settling into her career. Meticulous and resourceful, Grace spent months planning her trip, researching destinations, and saving every penny. Her journey began in South America, where she explored Peru, Chile, and Bolivia, sharing her adventures through vibrant Instagram posts and daily messages to her family back in England. Her updates were full of excitement, descriptions of bustling markets, stunning landscapes, and stories of new friendships formed on the road. On November 20th, 2018, Grace landed in New Zealand, the next destination on her carefully curated itinerary. For Grace, this leg of her trip was especially exciting. She had long dreamed of exploring the country's breathtaking scenery. After visiting the Bay of Islands and Hobbiton, she arrived in Auckland on November 30th and checked into the base backpackers hostel on Queen Street. The city was alive with holiday lights and the summer buzz, and Grace looked forward to experiencing everything Auckland had to offer. Grace's last few days in Auckland were filled with excitement and anticipation. She sent cheerful messages to her family, sharing photos of the city's Christmas lights and mentioning her plans to explore the area further. On the evening of December 1st, Grace texted her friend Amina Ashcroft back in the UK to share some good news. She had matched with someone on Tinder, a man named Jesse Kempson, who described himself as a successful businessman and a manager in the oil industry. Grace was cautiously optimistic, telling Amina, "He seems lovely. We're meeting tonight for drinks." Little did Grace know, the man she was about to meet had constructed an elaborate facade, concealing a history of deception and violence. But to Grace, this was just another adventure, a chance to make a connection in a new city. As she prepared for her evening out, Grace snapped a selfie in her black dress, smiling and captioning it, "Ready for my date." It would be the last photo she ever shared. Grace left the hostel at 5:37 p.m., her destination just a short walk away. She was last seen by her hostel roommates, cheerful and excited about her plans. As the city buzzed around her, Grace headed toward a night that seemed full of promise. But within 24 hours, those who loved her would be plunged into a nightmare, desperate for answers to a mystery that was just beginning to unfold. Grace Millane's December 1st began like any other day during her travels, exploring a new city, chatting with family and friends, and soaking in the excitement of Auckland's vibrant atmosphere. But as the evening approached, her plans shifted. That night, Grace had arranged to meet Jesse Kempson, a man she'd matched with on Tinder. Describing himself as a wealthy oil company manager, Jesse painted the picture of a sophisticated and ambitious professional. For Grace, who was always eager to meet new people, it seemed like an ordinary, promising night out. At 5:37 p.m., Grace left the base backpackers hostel on Queen Street, dressed in a knee-length black dress and white sneakers. She carried a small handbag over her shoulder. Grace walked to Sky City, an iconic entertainment hub in Auckland, where she had arranged to meet Jesse. CCTV cameras captured the pair's first meeting, a brief, awkward hug beneath the Sky Tower. They entered the building together, blending into the crowds of locals and tourists enjoying the warm summer evening. Jesse suggested they start their date at Andy's Burgers and Bar inside Sky City. Grace messaged her friend Amina Ashcroft back in England. "We're at a burger bar. It's going well. He's so nice." At first glance, Jesse appeared charming and attentive, paying for their meal and engaging Grace in conversation. They laughed over drinks, their evening seemingly off to a great start. After finishing at Sky City, the pair headed to the Mexican Cafe on Victoria Street. At 7:16 p.m., CCTV cameras showed them entering the restaurant. They ordered margaritas and continued their light-hearted conversations. Grace shared more updates with Amina, describing Jesse as an oil manager who was planning to visit London the following year. "I click with him so well," she texted. "I'll let you know what happens tomorrow." By 8:30 p.m., their evening led them to the Bluestone Room, a cozy bar tucked away in downtown Auckland. Here, Grace switched to whiskey-based cocktails, while Jessie continued with beers. The pair seemed comfortable, chatting and laughing, with Jessie gesturing animatedly as Grace smiled. At one point, she left the table to use the restroom. CCTV footage showed Jessie using this brief moment to rummage through Grace's handbag, a detail that would later add to the growing mystery surrounding the night. By 9:40 p.m., the pair left the Bluestone Room, walking arm in arm down Durham Lane toward Jessie's apartment at the City Life Hotel. Security cameras captured them entering the hotel lobby, Jessie with his arm around Grace's shoulder as she held his hand. For Grace, the evening had been filled with laughter, conversation, and promise. But for those who would later watch these moments on tape, they marked the final steps of a young woman's life. They rode the elevator up to Jessie's floor. As the doors opened, Jessie stepped out first, turning to hold the door for Grace. For a brief moment, Grace stood alone in the elevator, her face lit by the glow of the hotel's lights. It would be the last image of her ever captured alive. This is where Grace's story takes a devastating turn. If you believe stories like hers deserve to be shared, hit the like button to help us spread awareness. Your comments and thoughts keep this dialogue alive. Don't hold back. We want to hear from you. By morning, Grace would miss her planned birthday calls with family. Her cheerful texts and social media updates would abruptly stop. Over the next few days, worried messages from friends and family would go unanswered. The timeline of her disappearance had begun, leaving investigators to piece together what really happened in Jessie Kempson's apartment that night. The morning of December 2nd, 2018 was meant to be a celebration. It was Grace Millane's 22nd birthday. Her family in Essex, England, eagerly awaited their tradition of birthday calls. Grace, who had been sharing photos and updates every day during her travels, was unusually silent. Messages from her father, David, and her two older brothers went unanswered. By mid-afternoon, concern had turned into panic. David Millane described Grace as a home bird, someone who stayed connected with her family no matter where she was in the world. For her not to respond on her birthday was unthinkable. Her parents contacted the Auckland police, reporting her as missing on December 5th, 3 days after their last communication with her. Detective Inspector Scott Beard of the Auckland Police took the lead on the case. Initially, the police considered the possibility of a miscommunication or a misunderstanding. Travelers often changed plans on a whim, and there was no evidence yet to suggest anything was amiss. But as investigators looked closer, disturbing details began to surface. The first break in the case came when investigators visited Base Backpackers, the hostel where Grace had been staying. Her room was untouched, her belongings neatly arranged, her suitcase, her clothes, and her toiletries were all there, undisturbed. A careful young traveler, Grace had always kept her things organized. But there was one glaring absence: Grace herself. Using CCTV footage from across Auckland, police meticulously retraced Grace's final movements. The tapes painted a chillingly clear timeline. At 5:37 p.m. on December 1st, Grace left her hostel, dressed in a black dress and carrying a small handbag. She was seen walking towards Sky City, where she met Jessie Kempson, a 26-year-old she'd matched with on Tinder. The footage tracked their evening together, Grace and Jesse visited several bars, laughing and chatting. Her final known location was the City Life Hotel, where cameras captured the pair entering together at 9:40 p.m. Grace walked arm in arm with Jesse, her face lit with a smile. But after that moment, Grace disappeared from view. With the evidence from CCTV, the police identified Jesse Kempson as the last person to see Grace alive. Investigators visited his apartment at the City Life Hotel. Kempson answered their questions casually, claiming that he and Grace had parted ways after their date. He said she had been planning to meet up with friends. But something about his demeanor struck Detective Beard and his team as off. Kempson's story didn't quite align with the footage. He claimed to have walked Grace partway back to her hostel, but the cameras showed no such thing. What's more, his room at the hotel had been recently cleaned, a detail that raised immediate red flags. While continuing to press Kempson for answers, investigators found a key piece of evidence. Grace's Tinder profile had been unmatched by Jesse the morning after their date. And then there was the comment he had left on one of her Facebook photos just days earlier. Beautiful, very radiant. To Detective Beard, it seemed like the act of someone trying to establish an alibi or divert suspicion. As detectives built their case, they discovered that Jesse had a troubling history. He had a pattern of meeting women through Tinder, weaving elaborate stories about his life to impress them. Described by acquaintances as a compulsive liar, Jesse often claimed to be an oil executive, a millionaire, or even a professional athlete. To investigators, this painted a picture of a man with a carefully crafted facade, one that was beginning to crack under scrutiny. By December 7th, Jesse Kempson was officially named a person of interest in Grace's disappearance. As pressure mounted, he continued to stick to his story, but police were about to uncover a series of disturbing truths that would shatter his version of events and forever change the Millane family's lives. As Jesse Kempson sat across from investigators, the tension in the room was unmistakable. His calm demeanor, carefully rehearsed answers, and unflinching gaze might have convinced some, but not Detective Inspector Scott Beard and his team. They began to press harder, probing inconsistencies in his account of the night he spent with Grace Millane. It didn't take long for cracks to appear. Initially, Kempson claimed that Grace had left his apartment early in the morning to continue.
How did the evening sort of come to an end?
There was a hug and a kiss on the cheek, and a thanks, nice meeting you. And then I said, let me know about tomorrow. And she said, okay. And then she kept walking.
But the CCTV footage told a very different story. Investigators confronted him with images showing Grace entering his apartment, but never leaving. Kempson, visibly flustered, shifted his narrative. This time he said Grace had died accidentally during consensual rough sex. He claimed she had asked to be strangled, and things had gone tragically wrong. The police were skeptical. Kempson's story, while shocking, raised more questions than it answered. Why had he failed to call emergency services if it was truly an accident? And why, just hours after Grace's death, had he spent time online, researching how to dispose of a body and cleaning his apartment? The investigation reached a grim turning point when police uncovered receipts and surveillance footage showing Kempson purchasing a suitcase and cleaning supplies on December 2nd. He was also seen renting a car, which investigators believed he used to transport Grace's body. This evidence, combined with his shifting stories, painted a picture of premeditation. Then came the breakthrough. Using GPS data from Kempson's rented car, police traced his movements to a secluded area in the Waitakere Ranges, a forested region west of Auckland known for its dense greenery and rugged terrain. There, in a shallow grave, officers made a heartbreaking discovery. Grace Millane's body had been placed inside a suitcase, buried under a thin layer of soil. The autopsy confirmed what investigators feared most. Grace had died from sustained pressure to her neck, manual strangulation. The details were haunting, but for Grace's family, the pain was immeasurable. Her father, David Millane, had flown to New Zealand as soon as she was reported missing. Now, he stood thousands of miles from home, facing the unthinkable reality of identifying his daughter's body. As the police pieced together the evidence, Kempson's behavior after Grace's death revealed chilling details. On the morning of December 2nd, just hours after her death, he had taken another woman on a Tinder date, acting as if nothing had happened. This callous act, combined with his attempts to cover up the crime, erased any doubt about his true nature. What investigators uncovered next painted a far darker picture than anyone could have imagined. Kempson's history of predatory behavior extended far beyond Grace. He had a pattern of deceiving, manipulating, and endangering women he met online, leaving a trail of broken trust and fear. Grace's discovery in the Waitakere Ranges was not just a resolution to her family's desperate search. It was a devastating reminder of the darkness she had unknowingly encountered. Her death sent shockwaves through New Zealand and the world, igniting conversations about online dating safety and the hidden dangers lurking behind charming facades. By November 2019, almost a year after Grace Millane's tragic death, Jesse Kempson found himself facing a jury in the Auckland High Court. From the moment the trial began, it was clear this case would test the emotional resilience of everyone involved. At its center was Kempson's defense, that Grace's death was a tragic accident during consensual rough sex. But as prosecutors laid out their case, a much darker reality emerged. Prosecutors meticulously dismantled Kempson's claims, starting with a timeline of his actions after Grace's death. They presented CCTV footage showing him buying cleaning supplies, including bleach and gloves, just hours after Grace died. Another clip revealed him rolling a suitcase, later identified as the one containing Grace's body, out of his apartment and into a rental car. But the most damning evidence came from his online activity. Investigators found that Kempson had spent the early hours of December 2nd searching for disposal methods, including how to bury a body and Waitakere Ranges. These searches, coupled with his calm demeanor during the Tinder date he attended later that day, painted a picture of a calculated individual intent on covering his tracks. Yet the trial wasn't only about presenting evidence. Emotional testimonies from Grace's family brought the human side of this tragedy into sharp focus. Her father, David Millane, described Grace as a kind-hearted, adventurous young woman who made friends wherever she went. His voice cracked as he recounted the last phone call he shared with her just days before her death. "She told me how much she loved me," he said. "I never imagined it would be the last time I'd hear her voice." During the trial, one moment became almost unbearable for Grace's family. As part of the prosecution's case, graphic photos of Grace, taken from Kempson's phone, were displayed in court. These images, which Kempson had taken after Grace's death, were crucial in disproving his narrative of an accidental death. But the impact on Grace's mother, Gillian, was devastating. Overcome with emotion, she left the courtroom in tears as the images appeared on the screen. The defense argued that these photos were taken as part of consensual activity between Grace and Kempson, a claim the prosecution fiercely disputed. Prosecutors emphasized the predatory nature of Kempson's behavior, highlighting similar allegations from women he had dated previously. These testimonies revealed a pattern of manipulation, deceit, and violence, further undermining his defense. Perhaps the most harrowing aspect of the trial was the evidence of Grace's final moments. An expert pathologist testified that the pressure applied to Grace's neck had been sustained for up to 5 minutes, far too long for it to have been accidental. The chilling details left the courtroom silent, with even seasoned journalists visibly shaken. As the trial progressed, it became increasingly clear that Jesse Kempson's actions were far from the accidental misstep he claimed. His behavior before and after Grace's death revealed a man desperate to control the narrative, even as the evidence against him mounted. When the prosecution rested its case, it left the jury with one undeniable truth. Grace Millane's death was no accident. It was the result of deliberate, calculated actions by a man who had taken advantage of her trust and kindness. The emotional weight of the trial was immense, but for Grace's family, it was a necessary step toward justice. On November 22, 2019, after weeks of harrowing testimony and emotional revelations, the jury in the Auckland High Court returned to deliver their verdict. It took the 12 men and women just 5 hours to unanimously find Jesse Kempson guilty of the murder of Grace Millane. The courtroom fell silent as the foreperson uttered the word guilty, marking the end of a trial that had gripped the nation. Justice Simon Moore, presiding over the trial, wasted no time in addressing the severity of the crime. In February 2020, Jesse Kempson was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years. The judge's remarks were scathing, reflecting not only the brutality of the crime, but also Kempson's behavior during the trial. "Your actions, Mr. Kempson," Justice Moore said, "were not only callous and self-serving, but showed a complete lack of remorse. You treated Grace's body as if it were a piece of trash, concealing her in a suitcase and discarding her in the forest. It is clear from the evidence that you sought to deceive and manipulate at every turn." These words resonated not only in the courtroom, but throughout New Zealand and the world. The sentence brought a measure of closure to Grace's grieving family, who had flown to New Zealand to witness the proceedings. David Millane, her father, expressed both sorrow and gratitude in a statement to the court. "While we will never recover from losing Grace," he said, "we are grateful for the overwhelming support we've received from the people of New Zealand. Your kindness has given us strength during this unimaginable time." His words were a poignant reminder of the community's role in standing by the Millane family throughout their ordeal. For Jesse Kempson, the verdict marked the beginning of a long sentence. But his time in the spotlight wasn't over. Subsequent investigations revealed a history of predatory behavior, including allegations of sexual assault from other women he had dated. These revelations further solidified his image as a manipulative and dangerous individual, casting a shadow over his claims of innocence during the trial. The case of Grace Millane left an indelible mark on New Zealand. It ignited conversations about the dangers of dating apps, the importance of safety for solo travelers, and the broader societal need to address violence against women. Grace's legacy, however, lives on. Her family has worked tirelessly to honor her memory, creating initiatives to support young travelers and raise awareness about the risks they may face. As the courtroom emptied on that February day, the weight of the trial lingered, not just for Grace's loved ones, but for all who followed her story. Justice had been served, but the void left by Grace's absence could never be filled. Grace Millane's story is a stark reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences of meeting the wrong person. Her light may have been extinguished too soon, but her memory continues to inspire change and hope for a safer world. The aftermath of Grace Millane's murder sent shockwaves not only across New Zealand, but around the world. The senseless brutality of her death ignited a global conversation about safety, gender violence, and the hidden dangers lurking in modern dating. Among the most heartfelt reactions was that of New Zealand's Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. In an emotional press conference, she addressed the nation and Grace's grieving
From
family.
the Kiwis I have spoken to, there is this overwhelming sense of hurt and shame that this has happened in our country, a place that prides itself on our hospitality, on our manaakitanga, especially to those who are visiting our shores. And so, on behalf of New Zealand, I want to apologise to Grace's family. Your daughter should have been safe here, and she wasn't, and I'm sorry for that. I've advised the family through the police that if there is anything we can do to assist, we are here to help with that.
Your barbaric actions towards my Grace is beyond comprehension. No life sentence you receive today will match the life sentence without my Grace. But I will do my utmost to ensure that no other family needs to go through what we have endured. You have ripped a hole in my heart, one that will never be repaired. You walked into our lives and destroyed Grace in the pursuit of your own sexual gratification.
This moment captured not only the weight of Grace's loss, but also the collective mourning of a nation that prided itself on being a safe haven. Grace's death spurred widespread outrage, but it also inspired action. Her parents, David and Gillian Millane, channeled their grief into creating a meaningful legacy for their daughter. They launched the Love Grace charity, a foundation dedicated to supporting victims of domestic abuse and raising awareness about violence against women. The charity's mission reflects Grace's compassionate and caring nature, ensuring that her spirit lives on through acts of kindness and support for those in need. The Foundation's most impactful campaign involved collecting donated handbags filled with practical items like toiletries, sanitary products, and comforting notes. These bags were distributed to shelters and women's organizations, providing a small but powerful reminder to survivors that they are not alone. In a poignant statement, David Millane said, "Grace loved giving, and this initiative is our way of sharing her love with the world." To date, thousands of bags have been donated across the United Kingdom, New Zealand, and beyond, making a tangible difference in the lives of countless women. The legacy of Grace Millane also extended into advocacy and legislative discussions. Activists called for stronger measures to combat domestic violence, tighter regulations for dating apps, and improved safety protocols for travelers. Grace's story became a rallying cry, urging individuals and communities to take action against the systemic issues that enable such tragedies to occur. Locally, Grace's death profoundly impacted New Zealanders. The case brought to light the often overlooked dangers faced by women, even in a country with a reputation for safety. Many reflected on the tragic irony that Grace had travelled to New Zealand for adventure and discovery, only to encounter an individual whose actions would forever change how people viewed safety in the digital age. While Grace's family continued to mourn her loss, they also expressed their gratitude for the overwhelming support they received. "We will always miss Grace," her mother said in a statement. "But knowing her story has brought about change, and awareness gives us a sense of purpose." This sentiment underscored the power of Grace's story to inspire not just sorrow, but also meaningful progress in addressing violence against women. Grace Millane's life may have been tragically cut short, but her memory lives on in the lives she continues to touch. Her legacy reminds us that even in the face of unimaginable loss, hope and humanity can emerge, offering a light in the darkest of times. Grace's story is a call to action for all of us to prioritize safety, foster compassion, and never forget those we have lost. Together, we can honor her memory and ensure her light continues to shine. Grace Millane's story has touched the hearts of millions and sparked conversations about safety, trust, and accountability. What do you think about this heartbreaking case? Could it have been prevented? And what steps can society take to protect others from similar fates? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you found this story compelling and want more deep dives into the most gripping true crime cases, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you never miss our latest uploads. Together, let's continue uncovering stories that deserve to be told. Thank you for watching, and remember to stay safe, stay informed, and take care of one another.